Oriole Station floated in the darkness between two dying stars. It was an old place, built long before humans ever left their planet. Millions of beings from hundreds of worlds lived there, worked there, and passed through on their way to somewhere else. The station was always busy. Ships came and went at all hours. Markets sold strange foods and stranger medicines. And in the lower levels, where the lights flickered and the air smelled like metal, there were small shops and where tired travelers could rest. The drifting comet was one such. It sat at the corner of two narrow corridors, its entrance marked by a faded sign that glowed pale blue. Inside, the tables were old and scratched. The chairs did not match. The walls were covered with photographs from a dozen different worlds. It was not a beautiful place, but it was warm and the food was cheap, and the owner did not ask questions. Worked there 6 days a week. She was, or at least that is what everyone believed. Her skin was the color of a summer sky, smooth and faintly glowing. She had 4 arms, 2 on each side, and she moved with the quiet grace that all seemed to possess. Her eyes were large and dark, without any white, and when she looked at someone, it felt like she was looking through them. They were known throughout the galaxy. They were cold, distant, and proud. They did not mix with other species. They did not form friendships or bonds outside their own kind. Other beings respected them, feared them, and stayed out of their way. Was different, though she did not know why. Sometimes, when she was alone, she felt a strange ache in her chest. It was like missing something, but she did not know what. The feeling had no name. It simply lived inside her, quiet and persistent, like a wound that would not heal. She had no memories before 3 years ago. The elders told her she had been rescued from a damaged ship. They said her mind was broken by trauma and her past was gone forever. She accepted this because she had no reason not to. The elders gave her a name, a job, and a place to sleep. That was enough. That had to be enough. On this particular day, that was half full. A group of traders sat in the corner, their massive bodies barely fitting in the chairs. 2 Helix scientists shared a pot of bitter tea near the window. A lone traveler with scales covering his face read something on a glowing tablet. Moved between the tables, taking orders and delivering food. She did not smile, but she was polite and she was fast and the customers did not complain. The door opened and 2 humans walked in. Noticed them immediately. Humans were still relatively new to this part of the galaxy. They had only joined the greater community a few decades ago and many species still considered them young and unimportant. They were small, soft, and short-lived. They broke easily. They died easily. Most aliens did not pay them much attention. The man was tall for a human, with black hair that needed cutting and dark circles under his eyes. He wore the simple clothes of a freight pilot, stained with grease and worn at the edges. He looked tired. More than tired. He looked like a man who had been running for a very long time. The child was perhaps 5 years old. She had round cheeks and bright eyes and hair tied in 2 small ponytails. She held her father's hand tightly, looking around though with open curiosity. She did not seem afraid. Children rarely did. Felt that strange ache again. She ignored it. She walked to their table, her footsteps silent on the metal floor. The man looked up at her and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition, but that was impossible. Had never seen this human before. "Welcome to the drifting comet," she said. Her voice was soft, almost musical. "What would you like?" The man stared at her for a long moment. Then he blinked and looked away, shaking his head slightly. "Sorry," he said. "You reminded me of someone. Just water for me. And do you have anything sweet for my daughter?" "We have honey cakes from the Ember Worlds," said. "Children usually like them." "That sounds good, thank you." Nodded and turned to leave, but she felt something tug at her uniform. She looked down. The little girl was holding the edge of her sleeve. Her bright eyes were fixed on space, with an intensity that seemed strange for such a young child. The father said gently, "Let go, that's not polite." But did not let go. She stared her small lips parting, her eyes growing wet. She whispered. The word meant father in the human language called Korean. Knew this, though she did not know how she knew it. Said again, her voice trembling, "That's Mommy." The went silent. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. The traders froze with food halfway to their mouths. The helix scientists lowered their teacups. The scaled traveler looked up from his tablet. Everyone stared at the small human child pointing at the blue-skinned waitress. Felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The ache in her chest exploded into something sharp and terrible. Her 4 hands began to shake. "No," the father said, his voice breaking. He pulled the child close, wrapping his arms around her. "That's not Mommy. Mommy is gone. We talked about this." "It is her," cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It is. Look at her hand." She pointed at its wrist. At the small mark there, 3 interlocking crescents like moons caught in an endless dance. Had always thought it was a birthmark, though did not usually have such things. The father's face went white. He stared at the mark, he stared its face. His mouth opened but no sound came out. "That's impossible," he finally whispered. "They told me you were dead. They told me the ship was destroyed. There were no survivors." Stepped back. Her hearts were beating too fast. Yes, hearts. Had 2 of them and both were pounding against her ribs. "I do not know what you're talking about," she said. I have always been." But even as she spoke, she felt the lie in her own words. Something was wrong. Something had always been wrong. The ache, the emptiness, the feeling that she had lost something precious. The father stood up slowly. He was crying now, tears running down his weathered face. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. With trembling fingers, he activated it. A hologram appeared in the air between them. It showed a woman with dark hair and laughing eyes. She was human, fully human, with pale skin and 2 arms and a smile that could light up a room. She was holding a baby, and on her wrist, clearly visible, were 3 interlocking crescents. "Her name was," the father said, his voice barely a whisper. "She was my wife, she was mother, and 3 years ago her ship disappeared. They found wreckage, they found bodies, but they never found her." He looked at with desperate, hopeful, terrified eyes. "What did they do to you?" he breathed. "What did they do to my wife?" Could not answer. She could not move. She could only stand there, staring at the hologram of a woman she did not remember being, while a little girl sobbed and reached for her with small, desperate hands. And somewhere deep inside her, beneath the blue skin and the 4 arms and the cold conditioning, something began to wake up. The remained frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. The only sounds were quiet sobs and the distant hum of the station's engines. Its manager, a massive named, pushed through the kitchen door. He was 3 times the size of a human, with skin like stone and small eyes that missed nothing. He looked at the scene before him and frowned. "What is happening here?" he demanded. His voice was deep, like rocks grinding together. The father, whose name was, did not look away from. "This woman," he said, "is my wife." Snorted. "Your wife is human. You have lost your mind. Do not marry outside their kind. Do not even speak to other species unless they must." "She wasn't always," said. His voice was steady now, though his hand still shook. 3 years ago she was human. Her name was. She had black hair and brown eyes and a birthmark on her wrist shaped like 3 moons. Our daughter recognized her. Our daughter knew her." "Children imagine things," said dismissively. "Has worked for me for 2 years. She has always been." "Has she?" Turned to look at the big alien. "Where did she come from? What do you know about her past?" Opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at with something like uncertainty in his small eyes. "She came from a transport. They said she was a refugee, a survivor." "A survivor of what?" "I do not know. I did not ask." Nodded slowly. He looked back at who had not moved from where she stood. Her 4 arms hung at her sides. Her dark eyes were wide and confused. "Please," said softly. "Please look at the hologram again. Look at her face. Look at her mark. Tell me you don't feel anything." Did not want to look. Something inside her was screaming to run away, to hide, to forget this ever happened. But her body would not obey. Her eyes moved to the hologram still floating in the air. The woman in the image was laughing. She was holding a baby close to her chest, and the baby was reaching up to touch her face. The woman's eyes were crinkled with joy. She looked like someone who had never known sorrow. Felt pain, real physical pain, like a knife sliding between her ribs. She gasped and stumbled backward. "Mommy!" cried. She broke free from her father's arms and ran to, wrapping her small arms around one of his legs. "Mommy, please, please remember. You used to sing to me. You used to call me your little star." The words hit like a hammer. Little star. The phrase echoed in her skull, bouncing off walls she did not know existed, and behind those walls something stirred. A flash of memory, a dark room, a crying baby, a woman's voice singing softly. "My little star, don't cry tonight. The moon is watching, the world is bright." Pressed her hands against her head, all four of them. The pain was getting worse. It felt like her brain was being torn in two. "Stop," she whispered. "Please stop." Stepped forward, concern replacing suspicion on his stone-like face. "Are you unwell?" "I don't know," she gasped. "I don't know what's happening to me." Watched her with desperate hope. "You remember something, I can see it. Please, please try." "My name is not," screamed. The sound echoed through making everyone flinch. I don't know who you are or who that woman is. Leave me alone." She pulled away from, not roughly but firmly. The little girl fell back, her face crumpling with grief, turned and ran through the kitchen door, disappearing into the back of the. Silence filled the room again. Stood alone, his daughter crying at his feet, his hope cracking like thin ice. The other customers began to whisper among themselves. Some looked at him with pity, others looked with suspicion. A few simply looked away. Sighed heavily. He walked over to and looked down at him with something that might have been sympathy. "I think you should leave," they said. "You have upset my worker. You have upset my customers. Whatever you believe, this is not the place for it." Shook his head. "I'm not leaving, not until I know the truth." "The truth about what?" "That stole your wife and turned her into one of them." Laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Human, do you have any idea what you are suggesting? They are one of the oldest powers in this galaxy. They do not kidnap. They do not transform. They certainly do not take interest in humans." Then explained the mark on her wrist. Had no answer for that. Picked up, holding her close. The little girl buried her face in his shoulder, her body shaking with sobs. "She saw her mother," he said quietly. "A 5-year-old child who watched her mother leave and never come back. She recognized her. Children don't lie about things like that. They don't have reason to." Was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed again. "Wait here. I will talk to, but I make no promises, human. If she does not wish to speak to you, you will leave. Understood?" Nodded, understood. They disappeared into the kitchen. Sat back down, still holding. The other customers slowly returned to their meals and conversations, though they kept glancing at him with curious eyes. Looked at the hologram still glowing on the table. His face smiled up at him, frozen in a moment of perfect happiness. "I found you," he whispered to the image. "After all this time I found you, and I swear I'm not leaving without you." In the kitchen, sat on the floor with her back against the cold metal wall. Her whole body was trembling. The pain in her head had faded to a dull ache, but something else remained. Something worse. Memories, not full memories, but pieces. Fragments, like broken glass scattered across the floor of her mind. A pair of hands holding hers, human hands. A voice calling a name, not something else. A baby's laugh, the smell of flowers, the warmth of sunlight on skin that was not blue. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to push the fragments away, but they would not go. They kept coming, each one sharper than the last. She had always known something was wrong with her. The emptiness, the ache, the feeling that she had lost something precious. She had told herself it was trauma. She had told herself it was the price of survival. But what if it was something else? What if she had not survived at all? What if the woman she used to be had died, and something else had taken her place? The kitchen door opened and walked in. He looked down at her with his small, steady eyes. "The human is still here," he said. "He refuses to leave." Said nothing. "He believes you are his wife," continued. "He believes the took you and changed you." "That's impossible," whispered, "isn't it?" Was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "I have worked on this station for 40 years, he said. "I have seen many things. I have heard many stories. And I have learned that impossible is just a word people use when they don't want to believe the truth." He knelt down beside her, his massive body creaking with the effort. "I do not know who you are. I do not know where you came from. But I know this. Something about that human's words frightened you. And do not feel fear." He reached out and gently touched her shoulder with one enormous hand. "Perhaps it is time to find out why." The medical bay was small and cluttered, hidden in the lower levels of Oriole Station where officials rarely looked. The walls were lined with machines that hummed and blinked with colored lights. The air smelled like chemicals and something faintly sweet. Was a helix-born geneticist, one of the finest in this sector of the galaxy. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that shifted colors when light touched it. Her people were known for their intelligence and their curiosity, and she had both in great supply. She was also one of the few beings on the station who would help humans without asking questions. Had found her through whispered recommendations and careful questions. He had brought to her, along with, who refused to leave her mother's side even though her mother did not remember her. Now stood before a glowing screen, studying the results of her scans. Her expression was troubled. "This is remarkable," she said softly, "and terrible." Stepped forward, his heart pounding. "What did you find?" Turned to look at him. "Your wife's DNA is still human. Underneath everything, she is still the woman you married. But they changed her. They changed her at the most basic level." "Who demanded? Who did this?" His voice was cold with disgust. "I have heard rumors for years, but I never had proof. Now I do." She gestured at the screen and images appeared. Diagrams of bodies, charts of cellular structures, things did not fully understand. "They do not reproduce like other species," explained. "Their numbers have been declining for centuries, but they are proud. They refuse to change their ways. Instead, they found another solution." "What solution?" "They take beings from other species. They raid ships, attack colonies, steal survivors from disasters. Then they bring them to worlds and transform them. They modify their bodies, change their skin, add limbs, and they erase their memories." Felt sick. He looked at who sat on a medical bed with curled beside her. She was staring at the floor, her face blank, her 4 arms wrapped around herself. "They turn them into," he said quietly. "Not truly," corrected. "They turn them into workers, servants. The transformed ones are given the most difficult jobs. They serve in and clean stations and build ships. Real consider them lesser but useful." "Do they know, the transformed ones?" Shook her head. "The memory wipe is complete. They believe they have always been. They believe their human lives were just bad dreams." Walked to and knelt before her. She did not look up. He said gently, "Did you hear that? They stole you. They took you from us and made you forget, but you're still you. Underneath everything, you're still my wife, you're still's mother." Finally raised her eyes. They were filled with confusion and fear. "I don't remember," she whispered. "I try to remember, but there is only pain. Every time I reach for the past, something stops me." "That's the conditioning," said. She moved closer, her silver skin reflecting the light. They put blocks in your mind, walls to keep the memories locked away. When you try to access them, the blocks trigger pain responses. It keeps you obedient. It keeps you from questioning. Can you remove them? Asked desperately. Can you bring her back? Hesitated. I can try, but it will take time, and there is risk. The blocks are woven deep into her neural pathways. If I push too hard, too fast, I could damage her mind permanently. I don't care about the risk. His voice was suddenly strong. Everyone turned to look at her. I don't care if it hurts. I don't care if it's dangerous. I need to know who I am. She looked at who was watching her with wide, hopeful eyes. This child believes I am her mother, said. When she looks at me, she sees someone she loves. I cannot feel what she feels, but I want to. I want to remember what it was like to hold her. I want to know why she makes my chest ache with something that might be love. Reached out and took one of his blue hands. It's okay, Mommy, she said softly. I can teach you. I'll help you remember. Stared at the small hand in hers. So tiny, so warm, so trusting. Something cracked inside her. A wall, a barrier, just a small piece but enough. She saw a flash, a hospital room, a crying baby placed in her arms for the first time, the overwhelming wave of love that had crashed over her, so powerful it had stolen her breath. She whispered. The name felt strange on her tongue but also right, like a key finding its lock. Smiled through her tears. You said my name, you said it the way you used to. Watched with scientific fascination and personal sympathy. The child is helping to break through the conditioning, she observed. Emotional connections are stronger than any technology. They underestimated them. Moved closer, kneeling beside his daughter. What else do you remember? Closed her eyes. More fragments came, each one bringing fresh pain. A wedding, white flowers, smiling at her with such joy. A small apartment filled with sunlight, the smell of cooking food, laughter. A ship, an alarm, fire and screaming, and then nothing. She gasped, her eyes flying open. The attack. I remember the attack. There was an explosion. People were dying. I was trying to reach the escape pods, but something hit me and everything went dark. The ship must have arrived after, said. They scavenged the wreckage. They found survivors and took them. There were others, said. Tears were falling from her eyes now, the first tears she had cried in 3 years. I remember other voices, other screams. They took all of us. His face hardened with anger. How many people have they done this to? Thousands, said grimly. Maybe tens of thousands over the centuries. They are careful. They only take beings who will not be missed. Refugees, travelers, people whose ships disappear without a trace. They were wrong about, said. She was missed, she was mourned, and now she's coming home. He took his other hand, holding it gently. I don't care what you look like. I don't care if you have blue skin or 4 arms or anything else. You are my wife. You are his mother, and we are going to fix this together. Looked at him, this strange human man who claimed to love her. She did not remember loving him. She did not remember their life together. But when she looked at his face, at the desperate hope in his eyes, she felt something warm spread through her chest. It was not love, not yet, but it was a beginning. They will not let me go, she said quietly. I am their property. When they learn what has happened, they will come for me. Let them come, said fiercely. I've spent 3 years believing you were dead. I'm not losing you again, no matter what it takes. Squeezed hand. Don't worry, Mommy, is very brave. He flew through a star storm once to save a kitty. Despite everything, felt her lips curve upward. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. A kitty, she said. It was stuck on a broken ship, explained seriously. Everyone said it was too dangerous, but went anyway. He said no one gets left behind. His cheeks turned slightly red. It was a very important kitty. For just a moment, the fear and pain faded. For just a moment, they were simply a family, strange and broken and incomplete, but together. Then the door to the medical bay burst open, and everything changed. Three stood in the doorway. They were tall and elegant, their blue skin glowing softly in the dim light. Their dark eyes held no warmth, no emotion, nothing at all. Behind them stood two guards, carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. The leader stepped forward. She was older than the others, her skin a deeper shade of blue, her face lined with centuries of life. Her name was Elder, and she radiated power like heat from a fire. "So it is true," she said. Her voice was cold and musical. "One of our workers has malfunctioned. We received reports of a disturbance and we came to investigate." Moved in front of and shielding them with his body. "She's not your worker. She's not your property. She's a human being you kidnapped and experimented on." Elder tilted her head, studying him like a scientist might study an insect. "You are the human male causing trouble. We have been watching you since you arrived at the... Your claims are interesting but false." "They're not false," said firmly. She stepped forward, her silver skin shimmering. "I've run the tests. Her DNA is human. You transformed her against her will and erased her memories. That is a crime against galactic law." "Galactic law does not apply to internal matters," Elder said dismissively. "This creature is property. She was created by our technology. She belongs to us." "I belong to no one." Everyone turned to look at. She had risen from the medical bed, and though her body was trembling, her voice was steady. "I don't know who I am yet," she said. "I don't remember my life before, but I know I am not property. I know I am not a thing to be owned." Elder's expression did not change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "The conditioning is breaking down. This is unfortunate. You will come with us for, your memories will be properly erased, and you will return to your duties." "No." The word came from. The little girl pushed past her father and stood before the towering Elder, her small hands clenched into fists. "You can't take my mommy," she shouted. "She's not yours, she's ours. She's my mommy and you stole her, and that's wrong." For a moment, silence filled the room. The guards looked uncertain. The others shifted uncomfortably. No one had ever seen a child defy an elder before. Elder looked down at with cold amusement. "How touching! The offspring believes in fairy tales. Perhaps when we recalibrate your mother, we should take you as well. You would make a useful worker in a few years." His face went white with fury. He swept behind him and stepped forward, his body tense with barely contained rage. "You will not touch my daughter," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You will not touch my wife. You will leave this station, and you will never come near my family again." "And what will you do to stop us?" Elder asked. "You are one small human. We have ruled this galaxy for." "He is not alone." The voice came from the doorway. Everyone turned to see push his way through, his massive body blocking the exit. Behind him stood a dozen other beings, humans, helix scientists, even the scaled traveler from the... "This is not your concern," Elder said sharply. "Yes, it is," crossed his arms over his chest. "Has worked for me for 2 years. She is honest and kind, and if what the doctor says is true, if your people have been stealing and transforming innocent beings, then it is everyone's concern." More beings gathered in the corridor outside. Word had spread quickly through the station's lower levels. The truth about they was finally being spoken aloud. "My brother disappeared 5 years ago," someone called out. "His ship vanished near space. They said there were no survivors." "My wife's family lost 3 people in a space accident," another voice added. "What if they didn't die? What if they're like her?" The crowd grew angrier and larger. Station security officers appeared, their faces uncertain. They had always avoided conflicts with the... But now, seeing the gathered crowd, seeing the fury in their eyes, they hesitated. Elder's expression finally cracked. A flash of something that might have been fear crossed her ancient face. "This is foolishness," she said. "One human's delusions have poisoned your minds. We are leaving, and we are taking what belongs to us." She gestured to her guards. They raised their weapons, and then began to sing. It was soft at first, barely a whisper, a melody that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her, a place the conditioning had never touched. My little star, don't cry tonight. The moon is watching, the world is bright. The words flowed out of her like water from a spring. She did not know how she remembered them. She did not know why her voice was suddenly strong and clear, but the song was hers. It had always been hers. The guards froze. The crowd went silent. Everyone watched as sang, tears streaming down her blue face. Dream of flowers, dream of light. I'll hold you close until the night. When morning comes, I'll still be here. My little star, there's nothing to fear. Was crying, even wiped at his small eyes with one enormous hand. When the song ended, stood straight and tall. She looked at Elder with clear, calm eyes. My name is, she said. I am's wife. I am's mother. I was born on Earth in a city called on a rainy spring morning. I married the love of my life in a garden full of white flowers. I held my daughter in my arms when she was born and promised to protect her forever. Her voice grew stronger with each word. You took my body. You changed my skin. You gave me arms that were not mine and eyes that see different colors. But you could not take my heart. You could not erase my soul. And I am going home. Elder stared at her for a long moment. The crowd waited, tense and ready. Then the elder laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. You think this changes anything, she said. You think your little speech matters. We have taken thousands before you and we will take thousands more. This station cannot stop us. This galaxy cannot stop us. Maybe not, said quietly, but we can try. He stepped forward until he stood directly before Elder. He was so much smaller than her, so much weaker, so much younger. But he did not look away. Every species in this crowd has lost someone to your rescues, he said. Every one of them has stories of ships that disappeared, of people who never came home. You've been doing this for centuries because no one knew the truth, but now we know, and we will tell everyone. He pulled out a small recording device. Its light blinked red, recording. Every word you've said here has been broadcast across the station's public channels, he said. By now, half of Oriole Station knows what you've done. By tomorrow, half the sector will know. By next week, the whole galaxy. Elder's face went pale. For the first time, true fear showed in her ancient eyes. This is not over, she whispered. No, agreed, it's just beginning. The elder looked around at the angry crowd, at the recording device, at the station security officers who had finally decided which side they were on. Then she turned and walked away. Her guards followed. The other went with them, their elegant forms hunched with defeat. They did not look back. The crowd erupted into cheers. People embraced each other, celebrating a victory no one had expected. But in the middle of it all stood still. She looked at these two humans who had fought for her, who had risked everything to bring her home. I still don't remember everything, she said softly. I still don't know if I can be who I was. Took her hand. You don't have to be who you were. You can be who you are now. We'll figure it out together. Reached up and touched her mother's face. You sang the lullaby, Mommy. You remembered. Looked down at her daughter's shining eyes, and for the first time in 3 years she smiled. Not a smile, not a polite gesture of politeness. A real smile, a human smile. A mother's smile. 6 months had passed since the confrontation in the medical bay. 6 months of healing, of learning, of slowly becoming whole again. Sat by the window of their small apartment on Oriole Station, watching ships come and go against the backdrop of endless stars. Her blue skin caught the light from the distant suns, making her glow softly in the darkness. Her 4 arms rested in her lap, 2 holding a cup of tea, 2 holding a book she was not really reading. She still looked, had explained that the physical changes could not be reversed, not without dangerous surgery that might kill her. Her skin would remain blue. Her extra arms would stay. Her eyes would never again be the brown they had been on her wedding day. But she was learning to accept this body as her own. Behind her, she could hear in the kitchen cooking dinner. He had always been a terrible cook, she remembered now. He burned things and added too much salt and once set a pot on fire trying to make soup. But he kept trying every night because she had once told him that she loved coming home to the smell of food cooking. She remembered that now. She remembered many things. The memories had returned slowly, painfully over the months of treatment with, not all at once like a flood, but piece by piece, like a puzzle being assembled. Some pieces were still missing. Some probably always would be. But enough had returned that she knew who she was. She was born in, daughter of a fisherman and a schoolteacher. She had studied engineering at university, met at a coffee shop when he spilled his drink on her notes, and married him 2 years later in a garden full of white roses. She had loved to paint. She had hated mornings. She had dreamed of seeing the stars. That last dream had come true, though not in the way she had hoped. "Mommy!" came running from her bedroom, her small feet pattering against the metal floor. She was holding a piece of paper covered in bright colors. "Look what I made," she said, climbing into his lap without hesitation. She was not afraid of the blue skin or the extra arms. She never had been. To her, her mother was simply her mother, no matter what she looked like. Set down her tea and book, wrapping all 4 arms around her daughter. It felt natural now, holding this way. The extra limbs let her hug, hold closer, protect better. "What is it?" asked, looking at the colorful paper. "It's our family," said proudly. She pointed at the figures she had drawn. That's me, and that's you, Mommy." Looked at the drawing of herself. It was blue, with 4 arms, holding hands with the other 2 figures. Above the little family had drawn 100 tiny stars. "It's beautiful," said softly. "I'm going to show it to everyone at school tomorrow," declared. "I'm going to tell them my mommy is the bravest person in the whole galaxy." His eyes grew wet. Even now, even after everything, she still cried too easily. They had never taught her how to handle emotions. She was learning that on her own. "I don't know if I'm brave," she said. "You are," insisted. "You told off those mean. You remembered our song even when they tried to make you forget. That's brave." Appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a towel. His face was gentler now than it had been when they first met in the desperation and exhaustion had faded, replaced by a quiet contentment. "Dinner's ready," he said. "I only burned it a little this time." Laughed. It was still strange, laughing. Her voice sounded different than it used to, more musical, more like but the feeling was the same. That bubble of joy rising up from her chest, escaping into the air. The 3 of them sat down to eat. The food was indeed a little burned, but ate every bite. She could taste things differently now, her modified tongue detecting flavors humans never could. But burned food tasted the same in any body. After dinner, they watched the news on the small screen in their living room. The stories about the had not stopped. If anything, they had grown larger. All across the galaxy, transformed beings were coming forward. Thousands of them from dozens of species, all with the same story. Taken, changed, made to forget. Some had been workers for decades, their original lives erased so completely that they could never be recovered. But some, had families who had never stopped looking. Reunions were happening every day. Husbands and wives finding each other. Parents and children reconnecting. Friends who had been torn apart now embracing again. The stories spread across the networks, each one more emotional than the last. They were facing consequences they had never imagined. Trade agreements were being canceled. Diplomatic relations were being severed. The Galactic Council was holding hearings, demanding answers, threatening sanctions. For the first time in their long history, they were afraid. "Do you think they'll really change?" asked, watching a report about protests outside an embassy. considered the question. I don't know, they've been doing this for so long, it's not easy to change something that old. But it's not impossible. No, not impossible. Had fallen asleep on the couch between them, her head resting against his arm, looked down at her daughter's peaceful face and felt that familiar ache in her chest. But it was different now. It was not the ache of something missing. It was the ache of something full, something whole, something almost too precious to hold. I want to go back to Earth, she said quietly. Looked at her with surprise. Really, but your body, your appearance. I know I'll stand out, I know people will stare, but I want to see again. I want to walk on the beach where we got married. I want to visit my parents' graves and tell them I'm okay. She paused, looking out at the stars beyond the window. I want to know where she comes from, where we come from. I want her to grow up knowing that home is not just a place, but a feeling, a connection, something that no one can take away, no matter what they do to your body or your mind. Reached over and took her hand, her blue hand with its strange fingers. He held it like he had always held it, with gentleness and love. Then we'll go, he said simply, together. Leaned against him, closing her eyes. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. She could feel small weight against her side. She could smell the lingering smoke from dinner and the recycled air of the station, and the faint scent of the soap always used. She was not the woman she had been. She never would be again. They had taken that from her, and it could not be returned. But she was still herself. Her memories, her love, her soul, all the things that made her, they had survived. They had been buried, hidden, locked away, but they had never been destroyed. The human heart, she had learned, was stronger than any alien technology. It could endure things that should have broken it. It could find its way home even from the darkest places. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, it could bring you back to the people who loved you. Outside the window, the stars shone on. Millions of them, billions, each one holding planets and peoples and stories waiting to be told. The galaxy was vast and old and full of wonders and horrors in equal measure. But in this small apartment on this old station, a family sat together in the quiet of the evening. A father, a daughter, and a mother with blue skin and 4 arms who had crossed the stars to find her way back to them. They were home, and nothing in the universe could take that away from them.